Just doing some deer management this evening. This is a private arboretum with lots of specimen trees from around the country. I think there's a few from overseas as well. Client spent a lot of time and effort and money investing in this, and periodically he has a few deer that come in and like to strip the bark off, which damages the trees, allows excess water and fungi to get into the tree and ultimately kills it. So I'll talk you through what I'm using this evening. And I've got several rifles, but this is my sort of go-to rifle. It started off life as a Tikka T3X, but I had a custom PSE stock put on there, had a match grade barrel put on there, so a bolt and the chamber is the only bit left of the Tikka, and the trigger, of course. Got a Schmidt and Bender PM2 scope on there, and I've got a Hardy moderator on there, and I'm using home loaded 168 grain Hornaday ammunition. So it's the 3rd of April at the moment, and the roe doe season finished only a few days ago, and I was hoping to get it last week, but I just didn't have time. I've got 3 cameras on this bit of land, and I've seen a lot of muntjac and a lot of roe bucks and does. I've been sat for about half an hour so far. There was a doe when I got here, and she is just, where is she? She's just in a dead ground over there at the moment, but she's out of season, heavily pregnant, so obviously we'll leave her alone. I noticed 3 bucks that have been coming onto this ground in the last week, 10 days, and 2 muntjac. They all seem to come in the far corner over there. For those of you that don't know, obviously safety is paramount. This is actually a really tricky bit of land to shoot, because you've got to think not only where is your target, but if that bullet ricochets and a bullet will go through the deer, where's it going to end up? So you want what we call a solid backdrop. You obviously don't want any sky around your target. You don't really want any trees or hedgerows around your target. What you want is your deer with earth all around it. So you want to be able to see the grass field above the deer and below the deer, and that way you know that when the deer gets shot and the bullet goes through it, it's going to go into a safe backdrop, into the mud, into the soil behind it. To make matters even more complicated, I've got a footpath to my right, now there is a deer in the field over there, but that's not our field, and it does look like a buck from here. So when you're shooting a deer, it's all about shot placement, and generally a textbook deer shot would be it stood sideways, or what we call broadside, and you want to get a heart and lung shot. If you imagine a deer is stood broadside onto you, the heart and lung is roughly in line with the back of the front legs, and about a third, perhaps a bit more, up from the belly of the deer. But even with a heart and lung shot, a deer can run on 10, 20, 30, 40 yards, even more, especially on the bigger deer species like the fallow, when they're rutting, or if they know you're there, they're not quite sure what's happening, but they know you're there, their adrenaline gets up. But ideally what you want is a heart and lung shot, and you want to make rapid blood loss and a deer drop on the spot. The other shots that people might consider is a neck shot, high neck shot, or a low neck shot, or a headshot. There's pros and cons of all of them. I don't do headshots because there's a lot of things that can go wrong with a headshot. Neck shots, if it's within a certain distance, and I'm happy the deer is settled, then I will often do a neck shot because it will drop on the spot. It's a lot cleaner to grollock. You haven't got to worry about it running on a bit. And on a spot like this, where I'm bordered by 2 other bits of land that aren't mine, I haven't got access to be on, and if the deer runs onto the neighbouring property, then you really ought to go and speak to the landowner and just let them know what you've done and what you're doing. So in a situation like this, you just want a deer to drop on the spot. It's not so much of an issue if you're shooting on a 100-acre wood or a 5,000-acre estate. It's not really a massive problem, but on a tight spot like this, you just want to know that it's going to drop on the spot. And if you do shoot your deer, and your deer, textbook shot, heart and lung, but the deer decides to run on 20, 30 metres, and it could go, for example, into the cover down there. So you might be wondering, well, did I hit it? Didn't I hit it? And you can tell whether you hit it through experience, it goes without saying. But there's what we call a reaction to shot. How it reacts to the bullet hitting it can give a lot of indicators of where you've hit it. But if your deer does run off, it runs 20 metres, goes into the bushes, you just want to leave it for 10 minutes. Because what can happen, you hit your deer, you know you hit it, and it runs into the bushes. If you go up to it straight away, you'll just push it on and on and on, and it won't stop until it collapses and dies. So the best thing to do is let it run into the wood, let it run into cover, and let it settle. Leave it 5-10 minutes, and it will bleed out and die more often than not straight away, but it might just take a few minutes. There's pros and cons to that. If I can see the deer and I can see it's wounded and it's run on, I will always give it a follow-up shot, a second shot, because you don't want a deer to suffer. But if it's gone into cover and you can't see it, then you can't give it enough follow-up shot. And if you go after it, you'll just push it on, and you may never recover it. I've not got my 2 dogs with me today. I've got 2 black Labradors. They're both very good at following up shot deer. I don't think you can see it on my phone, but there is that female deer just in front of us, taunting me. She knows she's 3 days out of season. You can see on my rifle scope I've got a Picatinny rail on top. I use this setup for foxing on occasion, and I'll put my torch on top of there. And this scope, a very good scope, I've shot out to 1,471 yards with this, and it hit a target, a still target on that occasion, but I have had foxes up to 300-400 yards. Once you've shot the deer, then you need to grollock it, and that basically means taking out all the organs, all the digestive system, all the reproductive system, take the head off, take the feet off, get it ready to skin and butcher. There's loads of different techniques to doing a grollock. I personally like to take as much off in the field as possible, just get it done. Other people will just take the grollock out, the heart and lungs, take the offal out, and do the rest back at a larder or back at home. All the deal that we manage and shoot goes into the food chain. Nothing is ever wasted. Sometimes we give it to clients, sometimes we'll sell it to a game dealer. On occasion I might take it to a butcher if it's just the odd one, or sometimes I just give it to friends and family. And then to grollock a deer, you only need a few bits of equipment. You need a very sharp knife. You need a chest saw or a bone saw to help get you through the rib cage. You obviously need some gloves to keep your hands clean and to also stop any infection you might have on your hands, any dirt on your hands getting onto the carcass itself. And there's two ways to grollock a deer. You can either sort of hang it in a tree, a sort of field grollock. You might what we call slot its ankles, thread one leg through the other, hang it up on a tree, grollock it, and that way gravity assists with all the heart and lungs and the grollock coming out of it. You can also let the blood drain out. You can just do it on the floor, just cut it open and take everything out. It can be a little bit harder to do that way because the blood isn't draining out quite as easily, and it can just sort of pool in a rib cage. There's another field just over there. The deer come from there. There's a wood, quite a big wood, just over there. And the deer come from there into my client's garden. A female deer still there. You find a roe deer that they tend to sort of come out morning and evening. But here I've seen them on the camera all day long. Well, I hope you found it interesting. Any questions, feel free to post in the comments. If you are in the Hampshire area or the south of England, please feel free to look up HW Pest Control. And I'd probably better be a little bit quieter now, and hopefully a buck or a midge coming on.